Okay, before we start into 7.4 in Algebra 2, I thought it was a good plan that we talk about least common denominators. So a least common denominator is something we're going to need to have the skill when we're actually doing it with polynomials, but we're kind of going to go back to elementary. So a least common denominator, think back to like if you needed to add something like maybe 3/4 plus 1/5. You had to have common denominators to be able to do so. And that's where we're going to see this skill. We're going to do this type of a thing with adding or subtracting rational equations, so fraction polynomials, and we're going to have common denominators. So with that, I thought we should go ahead and just review how to find a common denominator so that we have that available to us when we're actually ready to dive in. So how to find the least common denominator, which is like a least common multiple, okay? We're going to do it with numbers first, which is something you learned back in elementary, because then we're going to apply the same concept to variables. All right, so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write 8 in prime factorization form. So that's where you make the factor tree, or some people use kind of like, some people call it the cake method or the hockey stick method, like they do this. Or people prefer to use the tree. I don't really care which one you like to do, just as long as you can do it. So I find out that 8 is 2 cubed. Okay, now I want you to do the same thing with 6. So whichever method you prefer is fine with me. And 6 is 2 times 3. So literally to write it out in primes, it's just 2 times 3. So remember, prime numbers are like 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and so on. So here's what you do when you're trying to find the lowest multiple they both share. It's kind of funky. You look at the prime factorization, and we're going to look at the 2's first. 2 is a factor of both 8 and of 6. Now you look at the exponents. 8 is 2 cubed. 6 is just 2 to the 1. You choose the one that has the highest exponent, the highest power of the factor. So we're going to choose 2 cubed. So let's write that down. So the least common multiple, which is how we found the lowest common denominator, start with 2 cubed. Okay, now look at the 3. The one on the right from 6, there was a 3. There was not a factor of 3 in 8. 3 doesn't go into 8. So you use the highest amount of times it occurs in one or the other. So it does not occur in 8. A 3 occurs once in 6. So you use the 3 just one time. And we're going to do this a bunch. It's going to make more sense as we go. So 2 cubed is 8 times 3 is 24. The lowest common multiple, or what we would use to make the least common denominator, would be 24. Okay, if that was confusing, hang in there with me. Let's go ahead. Let's try another one. So what your job is your job is to take each number and write it completely down in prime factorization. So 25 is 5 times 5. 5 is a prime number. That's as low as we go. Instead of 5 times 5, let's write it down as 5 squared. Okay, now I want you to try 40. So whichever method you like is fine with me. I tend to do the factor tree, but you can totally do, like I said, some people call it hockey stick or cake method. However you want to do it is fine. So 2 times 20. 20 is 2 times 10. 10 is 2 times 5. And that's where we're at. So if we go here, then I have 2 cubed times 5. Okay, so to find the lowest common denominator, which comes from, if you remember learning about least common multiple back in the day, what you do is you look at each factor, and it's kind of funky. You choose the highest power of each factor. So I'm going to look at 5. I have 5 squared, and I have 5. The highest power of the 2 is 5 squared, so I need to use 5 squared. Now I look at 2. On the first one, there's no 2, so think of that as like 0 2's. And then over here, there's 2 cubed. The highest between the 2 is 2 cubed. So now you can use a calculator to do this. 5 squared is 25, times 2 cubed is 8. You do that in a calculator, 200. So if we were adding a fraction and the denominators, the bottom numbers were 25 and 40, then the lowest common denominator would have to be 200. Okay, let's try it again. So 18 is 2 times 9. 9 is 3 times 3. Okay, so I have 2 times 3 is 3 squared. Okay, let's do the same thing. Let's do a 12. 12 is 2 times 6. 6 is 2 times 3. So 2 times 2 is 2 squared, and then times 3. All right, so between the two, I did them in 2 different colors to kind of separate them. Start with the factor of 2. The 18 had a factor of 2. The 12 had a factor of 2 squared. You choose the factor of 2 with the higher power, so we're choosing 2 squared. Okay, now look at the 3. The 18 had 3 squared. The 12 just had 3. Between the two, you choose the higher power. 3 squared is higher. And so then you have 2 squared times 3 squared, which is 4 times 9. So 36 would be your lowest common multiple, or what you would use to find your least common denominator. Okay, so let's do it again. 60 is 2 times 30. 30 is 2 times 15. 15 is 3 times 5. So how you get 60 is you have 2 times 2, that's 2 squared, times 3 times 5. That's 60 written out in what's called prime factorization. This is one of those skills that's kind of haunting us from the elementary. All right, 100 is 2 times 50. 50 is 2 times 25. And 25 is 5 times 5. So how I can write 100, I have 2 squared times 5 squared. So it's 2 squared because there's 2 times 2, and 5 squared because there's 5 times 5. Okay, so the lowest common multiple, or the least common denominator, how we find it is we choose each factor, we choose the highest amount that they appear between one or the other. So compare the 2's first. The 60 has 2 squared, the 100 has 2 squared. So that's a tie, they're exactly the same, so we're going to use 2 squared. Okay, now look at the 3. The 60 had a factor of 3, the 100 did not have a factor of 3. You choose the one that occurs the most. The most they occurred was just a 3. So 3 to the 1 power, or just 3. Okay, compare the 5's. The 60 had just 5. The 100 had 5 squared. Use the higher amount. Don't use 5, use 5 squared. And then, like I said, you can type this in a calculator to find out what number this is. 2 squared times 3 times 5 squared is 300.